a day, I live in a dream. I live in a dream. Baby,
Welcome to Only Trying to Help, the podcast where we try to help you be helpful to other people. And I brought back my guest Marie, who you've met before, but in a slightly different capacity and on a different topic. So, Marie, would you like to reintroduce yourself?
I would love to, Kate. So, for those that know me, hello again. And for those that don't, I'm Marie, and I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. And among all the things that I do, I am a certified nature-informed therapist, which basically means I help people heal using the power of nature. And integrating nature into my work is something I love and cherish. And I am so excited to talk more about nature today with you, Kate.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're here. Folks who know me well know this would not be my area of expertise. I am a bona fide indoorsy kind of girl. And so if anyone wanted help on nature, I certainly needed to bring in the big guns, and it's not me. Um, I knew that you were working on some like training and consulting and doing workshops around environmental wellness. What can you tell us about that?
It is a like one of those buzzwords that you hear sometimes when people are trying to get bonus points, or like companies or businesses. They're like environmental wellness. And the thing about it is that everything takes their own little spin. You might hear about environmental wellness and reducing pollution, but you don't hear about how to improve environmental wellness or what the connection is in your day to day. So let me give you like a nature informed definition. Okay. How does that sound?
Yeah, good.
Okay. Environmental wellness is basically the practice of making choices to promote a healthy relationship between you, your surroundings, whether they're social, natural, or built environments, and nature. Okay. So whatever environment you're in, like how to make it better between you and whatever your environment is.
You know what I'm just realizing that is working out really well? This was not intentional. Just the other day, I recorded an episode for the podcast about the connection between our minds and our bodies. And what's working out accidentally, I'm just realizing, is that this is really about the connection between our minds, our bodies, and our environments that we inhabit. So I don't get credit for building upon these episodes so beautifully. That was kind of an accident, but this is cool. And I think it's going to be really well aligned. And you're right, Marie, when I've heard environmental wellness before, I've heard about it in terms of like, are the office spaces we work in clean and healthy? Do they have asbestos on the walls, or is there pollution in your town? Or, are there enough green spaces? But I think you're using it in a different kind of way that maybe is more applicable to the everyday person.
Yes. And actually what you're talking about, and I think this happens a lot, which is why it can feel sort of inaccessible to just like your average person, that's just walking and living in this world. They're like, oh, that sounds a little confusing or maybe too crunchy. So what you're talking about with like are buildings like conducive to a good working environment? Maybe we could have natural light and all these things and plants. So what that is a separate concept called biophilic design. Okay. And you may be like, oh my gosh, that sounds too crunchy, too above me. So let me tell you what it is. Biophilic design is an approach, whether it's from architecture, interior design, just how you set up your environment, that integrates natural elements. And the purpose is to promote well-being, and then again, a connection to nature.
Wow. Okay. So this topic is a lot broader than I ever realized. And say a little bit about what you're doing with your workshops and like how this has become a part of your work.
Okay. So as you know, it's been the last 200 years or so that humans have started to shift to spend most of their time indoors. So when we came indoors, when we started working indoors instead of outdoors, when we had electricity, okay, we didn't use the natural cycle of the sun to dictate our activity. We started having problems as a result. Okay, so you can look at literature and see like people's stress increased as they spent more time indoors and less time out in nature. And then you start adding on people's mental health conditions, physical conditions, somatic complaints started really having a negative impact on their lives as we have decreased our time in nature. Okay. So there are actual studies. For example, there was one that was done in the UK in 2019 that talks about how even integrating biophilic design, for example, into your environments, whether those environments are built environments like, you know, the office buildings and cities and infrastructure, or whether they're natural environments like outdoor spaces, you know, like a forest, for example, or even a social environment where you have these relationships with people or friends or work communities. The more you integrate nature or natural aspects into those environments, the better people feel. And not just like mood. I'm talking reduction in cortisol and stress hormones, reductions in A1C levels for diabetics, like the heart disease, blood pressure goes way down. And this is even man-made biophilic design, like natural light coming in.
Oh,
positively affects us.
hmm
Does that make sense?
It does. I'm kind of smiling because, I'm a trainer for a living. I teach workshops for a living. I'm always looking up like new information to share with groups who I'm training. And nature comes up all the time. And I notice myself. This is so embarrassing. But I noticed myself as an indoorsy kind of gal who's not so into being in nature, like almost ignoring that point every time it comes up. Like I was doing a workshop around like isolation and loneliness, and I looked up like, the things that help people, feel more connected. And of course, on a list of 10 things, nature is on there. I was doing a workshop on anxiety and depression and trying to develop a list of 10 strategies for people. Of course, somewhere on that list of 10 strategies, nature's on there. Overcoming trauma, looking up a list of 10 strategies, somewhere on that list of 10 strategies is being nature. And I find myself always thinking like, oh, well, I'll just focus on the others.
Okay, so this brings me back to your question. Your initial question of why you asked is like, well, what are you teaching in these workshops? Like, why are you even, what's the point? What are you doing this? And environmental wellness, like,
Yeah.
not who cares, right? But why? What's the why? And the reason is because nature has so much to offer when it comes to positively affecting your life. And it's in ways that you don't always realize. Here's the other thing. This is what I'm really focusing on in my workshops and in my speaking events is identifying the ways you can integrate nature, improve your environment that you aren't thinking of. The ones that you're like, oh, really? Can I really just listen to the sounds of birds and my blood pressure will go down? Yes. Yes.
Oh, I've got one. Tell me if this counts.
Okay.
You know what sound I like to go to sleep to sometimes? I'll find it like I don't have like a sound machine, so I'll find it on like YouTube and just play it. Is the sound of crackling fire.
Oh, yes. I have one too, actually. Crackling fire and crickets.
And it's so funny because it's like it conjures up a feeling of camping, but I would never go camping. But somehow hearing like campfire is a really nice, cozy sound, and I get to have it without having to go camping.
Okay, see, I love what you did there. I get to have the benefit of this nature experience without having to actually go into nature.
Hmm.
No,
Hmm.
okay, now you're having a choice in this, right? And then there are folks that don't have a choice. You know, they might be living in an urban setting, or maybe children that are not in charge of like where they get to spend their time, right? They don't have the autonomy to decide that usually. So part of my love of learning is coming up with creative ways for you to access nature, even in places you least expected to be able to do so.
Hmm.
Listening to
Okay.
sounds is a great one.
Yeah. And this definitely gets my attention because I also think of myself as I'm an auditory person more than I am visual. Some people put like the fire screenshot thing like on their TV so it looks like a fireplace. I don't need to see fire, but I like the sound of it, the crackling sound. So yeah, sounds will probably be my like nature gateway, gateway drug into nature.
Yes,
I like the sounds. So that's cool to know that that is a part of what you're talking about, that counts as a little bit of nature in my life.
it does. And you know what? I am feeling prompted. I'm having an urge to play a little game with you really quick. Are you game for the game?
Waiting for the game. Do I have to go outside though? Because I don't know
You
about
do
that.
not. You do not. In fact, this is more of like you know more than you think you know
Okay.
about how nature can help you. Okay.
Mhm.
So we're talking about sounds. You named fire. What
Mhm.
are a couple other sounds do you think that are the most healing of sounds that nature has to offer? Go ahead.
I know at least one, and it's got to be waves crashing.
You
Yeah,
nailed it. It's waves
yeah,
and water sounds.
yeah. It had to be. So does like you said water sounds? So like rain falling, would that be a separate one, or that counts all in there?
No, any sort of water movement, the sound of moving water really takes us back to like our roots, so to speak. Takes us back to before the industrial era, where some days we don't have any access to natural water sounds at all, right?
When you said takes us back, I really thought you were going to say like to the womb. Like
But oh my gosh, Kate, perhaps.
that's where I thought you were going, was like we started our lives in water. Yeah.
And that sound, that right? There's a reason that sound is highly recommended for infants and newborns,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
water, we got one. We have the fire crackle, okay? But I'm looking for another one.
Is it birds
It
chirping?
it is. It's
Yeah.
birds, mhm, forest sounds.
Okay. Uh like the sound of wind blowing?
Wind is another one. Yes.
How many more are there?
Those are the top three. And then
Okay,
you can
okay. I
mhm.
was gonna say like I think I'm out after that.
Well, you're like, what other sounds are there,
Ugh.
right? But integrating, like you said, you looked on YouTube, you found something and you played
Mhm.
it and it helped you sleep.
Yep.
That is one way. And then for listeners, we're going to have a section of where we go over our tips in like consecutive order so you can listen and really like think about how you're going to do it. But yes, listening to sounds, even manufactured, man-made sounds from YouTube, can help you
Okay.
mentally and physically and spiritually.
All right. Let's get into that list of tips.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that kind of coincides with environmental wellness is this concept of rewilding. Have you ever heard
Mm.
that phrase before?
It sounds like it's going to get me into trouble. Like my mom will be mad at me if I've been rewild.
You know, valid. right? Because we hear like, oh, what does that mean? Am I like abandoning all modern conveniences? Am I going to just run away and live in the woods and swear off shoes for the rest of my life? You know, all
It
those kinds of
sounds
things.
it sounds rebellious.
You know what? Why do I love that actually? Right? Especially in a time where, you know, we need like gentle acts of rebellion. Why can't spending time in nature be one of them? Am I right? So
Yeah.
rewilding is the concept of reconnecting with nature. Let me say that again.
Mhm.
Rewilding is about connecting with nature in ways that restore your well-being. So if
Mm.
you don't have a connection with nature, it's an opportunity, an invitation, if you will, to reconnect with nature because we have become so disconnected
Yeah.
in our modern society.
Okay.
So let's do some of those tips and tricks on how to integrate nature into your life. How about that? All right. So, as you said, Kate, whenever you're making a list for a workshop or an event, nature comes up on it.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's really no accident.
Mm-mm.
And I think a lot of us like we know where we're like, oh, you know, the doctor's gonna tell me to go outside and go for a walk out in nature, but you know, I don't have time, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. Right. So if you don't hear anything today that applies to you, I invite you to think creatively. Like think creatively, think outside the box. And maybe Kate, you can help come up with some of those ideas too. All right. So, number 1 on my list for tips and things to do to improve your environmental wellness and rewild with nature is to connect.
Mhm.
Spend time outside every day if you can.
Mhm.
This does not mean you have to go on a 3-mile hike. Even 10 minutes sitting out on your porch is spending time with nature. If you don't have a porch, go sit on a bench on your street. If there's no bench, just stand outside, and better yet, stand in front of a window and look outside. Because
Mhm.
even that is you intentionally connecting.
Cool. I love it.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to like, you're like, oh, Marie, I think I can do that, but I think I could do more. How can I do a little deeper dive on this? I got you. Gardening.
Mhm.
Gardening doesn't have to be a 4-acre plot with like a crop that you're rotating. It doesn't have to be that. Gardening can be some herbs on your kitchen counter. Gardening can be, you know what I love to do, and I have it right now is, you know, green onions that you get from the store. I have them in a jar of water, and they keep growing. It's a
Cool.
right, and I'm watching it every day. I'm watching it grow, and I'm like, I'm so proud of my little onions. And then in a couple of days, I get to cut them and use them again.
There is something about watching the growth that I think is a way of connecting to nature. Like you're watching nature in action.
Yes, and that gets into my second point, which is bringing nature indoors. Right.
Hmm.
So we talked about like just going outside or looking outside or sitting outside, open a window, let it blow on you, the air. But bringing nature indoors is specifically what biophilic design is. So now I know a lot of people will say, I cannot keep a house plant alive. So I don't know about bringing a plant inside. And yet, what if I told you that sometimes plant care is a reflection of self care?
Mm. Well, you've kind of blown my mind, and also it's not that surprising now that I think about it.
Because what happens if you're not caring enough for yourself? What happens to your plant?
You wilt.
Right, right. You're like, I can't keep a plant alive. It's so dry, it's dehydrated. And then you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, oh, I'm also dehydrated and
Me
haven't drank.
too.
Right.
That
And now
plant
you,
is That plant is looking better than I am these days.
Right. Like who knew your plant could be a mirror for your experience.
Hmm.
So if your plant is looking a little crunchy and maybe needs some attention, reflect on that. Do I need some attention as well?
Yeah.
And now what are you doing? You are trying to better yourself in relationship with what your plant is doing. So
Hmm.
biophilic design, bringing a plant inside to mirror your experience, nurturing the plant and then turning around and nurturing yourself at the same time.
Yeah, I like tying those things together because we know a lot about how people form habits. And one of the best ways to form a habit is to connect it to some other habit that you already have. And so if you have a plant and you've developed a daily routine of go water the plant, you can easily tie to that. Okay, every time I finish watering the plant, I enjoy 3 cleansing breaths for myself, like something like that, like just to connect the two.
Exactly. Exactly. And one of the benefits of bringing nature indoors is the opportunity to learn about how to care for something.
Mhm.
And then again, if we're using a house plant as a mirror, sometimes you have to learn how to care for yourself too.
Yeah,
So as
yeah.
you're learning to what the plant's needs are and you're going through trial and error, you're like, oh, maybe I overwatered it, maybe I underwatered it, maybe it needs vitamins, maybe I need some vitamins, right? So you start to think about things maybe a little differently.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's another thing? So we talked about water elements, right? So if you want to bring nature indoors and to better your relationship with nature and your environment, you could get a water feature.
Oh, yeah.
You know, those little small indoor fountains that you can plug in, and it might look like a bonsai tree or it might look like, a little pond. You could plug that in, refill it periodically, and benefit immensely from the sounds of that moving
Mm.
water.
Hmm. I like that idea because I can't build a fire right in my office, but I can put a water feature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then one of the last things about biophilic design is decorating or using nature inspired art and colors.
Mhm.
There's a whole thing about color theory and like which colors help you feel better and which ones will irritate you, which ones make you want to get up and leave so the next person can come sit at your table and eat, right? So there's all this
Mm.
science behind that. So you could, picking from a palette of earth tones, for example, you could bring in some pictures or some art. Even if you're like, I can't do a plant, Marie, bring in a fake plant, bring in a picture of a plant, print off the picture of the beach you went to on your last vacation that you love so much and put that on the wall, and you are
Mhm.
helping yourself. It's a small step, but it has a big impact.
Yeah. It's funny. I keep joking that I'm not very naturey. I'm an indoorsy kind of gal, and people do kind of know that about me. And I do still get upset when people say, and a lot of my friends will say it, Kate hates nature. I do not hate nature. What I always say is that I really enjoy looking at nature. I like when my I'm traveling and my hotel room has a beautiful view of the ocean or beautiful view of palm trees, or you and I were speaking earlier about looking out the window to snow falling, and I love all that. I don't always like to be in nature, but I love looking at it. I love looking at pictures of nature, and people laugh because they think that sounds ridiculous, I guess. But you are really validating me right now that it's not so silly. Because when I say it, I'm being sincere. I like looking at nature. I don't really like being in it. And everyone laughs like it's the funniest thing they've ever heard. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm actually being serious.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, Kate, because nature isn't for everyone. It's really not. And that might sound silly. It's like, oh, it's our natural environment, our first home, And it's also true for the last couple of 100 years, we've moved further and further away. And so it's understandable that we might not be spending as much time in nature and therefore have some reservations about that. And, you know, I mean, the truth of it is too, is not all of our environments are supportive of spending time in nature. If you live in a place that's really hot and you have asthma, guess what? You're not going to spend as much time outdoors because it literally creates breathing problems for you. But there
Mhm.
are alternatives to that. And then there's even things you can do to support someone else,
Yeah.
right? If they are going through something and you know nature, or maybe you're learning now that nature can be really helpful, there's things that you can do, some of the things we talked about, and we'll name it very clearly, that you can do to help someone else, because that's what we're here. We're only trying to help, whether it's help ourselves or help other people.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is a good time for this, but as you've been speaking, I've been thinking about like, I'm imagining like you're a parent and you need to have a tough talk with your kid. And yeah, you could have that talk sitting in the living room, but you could also say, "Do you want to go for a walk? Let's take a walk." Or let's get our bikes, go down to the park. And like there are opportunities to get out and get moving and get in nature to have that talk. Or even with your spouse. I know a friend of mine, she and her husband pretty much every evening take a walk together like after dinner, and it's the time for the two of them to like kind of hash out some difficult conversations they need to have. People do this driving, I guess, but still, like getting out of the house might be a nice way to be there for somebody and to tackle life's problems together, maybe with the help of nature around you.
Absolutely. Nature has so much to offer. Um, and, you know, we can offer nature things back, but that's not what our conversation is today, right? But nature is our original mother that is ready to nurture us in our healing if we are open to accepting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just kind of giving that a moment for, for folks to really listen in and think about that. Like it is the the clearest path to feeling nurtured. Um, which is interesting. You and I both have psychology degrees, and there's this debate of nature versus nurture, but you're talking about how nature is the thing nurturing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nature nurtures us in ways that we don't even understand, you know, and part of giving back to nature is returning the nurturing, you know, like by
Yeah.
taking care of our environment. Um, and it goes beyond so much more than just a one-to-one exchange,
Hmm.
right? Like we can all benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Knowing that we're running low on time, is there something that you haven't said yet that you would really like to be able to say?
Well, you know, this podcast is all about helping others, right? Like I'm only trying to help someone going through something. How can I best do that? Right. And as a certified nature informed therapist, shocking, right? I've got some nature things that you can do to help someone else.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, let's see. Like, give me an example, Kate. Like, do you have an example of somebody going through something that,
A million. So how about um, let's use the example. This is on my mind because yesterday I trained a whole bunch of people who work with older adults. How
Mhm.
about somebody's grandmother is maybe not able to live on their own anymore, and we have to have a tough conversation with grandma about, independent living may not be the best thing for you right now, and maybe there's some tension around that.
Mhm. Tough conversation. Nobody wants to have their independence taken from them. And that's what often happens, right?
Yeah.
When you reach the elder stage of life, you know, it's not safe for certain things to happen anymore. So if you were a person needing to have that conversation, I would take the suggestion that you had, which was take it outside if you can. Okay, take it
Hmm.
outside because there is so much you can see in nature about what happens when things get hard,
Yeah.
right? When a branch breaks, you know, what happens to the tree. Does it grow?
Hmm.
Does it need support? Like what's going on? There's a lot of metaphors you could chime in on there. But even being in front of a window, sitting in a chair with the window open and the breeze coming on you, just to have that conversation of, hey mom,
Yeah.
we've got to talk about something hard. When that breeze comes in, it's inviting in a moment of pause to take a deep
Hmm.
breath,
Yeah.
right? And you may
Yeah.
not even know in the moment, oh, the breeze is telling me to take a deep breath, but you feel it.
Hmm.
You feel it
Yeah.
kind of like helping you kind of blow some of the stress away,
I just did it right now.
right?
Like just even imagining like the breeze hitting my face, it caused me even sitting here in my office to go, yeah.
Huh? So welcome in the sunlight. If the shades are drawn and you need to have that a hard conversation, open the shades.
Yeah.
If you're in a room and you've got a computer, put a screensaver on that has some natural elements on it. Even that, right, is something, a focal point to look at that was going to help reduce your stress during that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Marie. I think that's a really good example of, like, again, just how some small things might make a tough conversation just a tiny bit easier. No one's saying the conversation would be a piece of cake now, but these little things may lighten the load a little bit if you are paying attention and notice them.
Yes. Now, that circumstance is a specific one, right? Having a tough conversation. Now, what about in a situation where you're dropping a gift off, right? Somebody's experienced a death, for example, and you don't know what to do to support them. You're only trying to help. So, what's a nature informed way you can support them? Well, maybe a plant isn't going to be the best thing right away, right? I do encourage plants, but Kate, if I gave you a plant and you're like, I'm dying, therefore this plant is going to die. So thanks for your trash gift. I just get to watch something die all over again. Now I'm sad. So maybe not that for the first thing, but you could give a puzzle that is the picture of a forest,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
give
Yep.
somebody something to do with, and a picture of something that is pretty that they like to look at. Maybe it's a beach, maybe it's a forest. Maybe you know that person and what they like.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Like, this to me feels like nature more accessible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking
Yeah.
outside of the box is really helpful,
Hmm.
but also challenging if you're like, I'm not a thinker out of the boxer. I'm not creative. I can't do that. It's okay. Go into Google, right? Nature items I can get for someone who is blank, 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 whatever the issue is. Send them a puzzle, send them a candle that smells like fresh air.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. We've done a lot of episodes on this podcast about gift giving and things like that, and I do tend to come down hard on plants as gifts because to me, through my eyes, okay, through Kate Watson eyes, it feels like a chore. You just gave me a chore. You just showed up at my house and gave me a thing to take care of, and like I don't want a thing to take care of. You're helping me see that there's another way to look at that plant, but there's also another kind of gift that may not be a thing to take care of. It could be a beautiful picture frame that has flowers on it, or a picture in it that is of a forest or a waterfall or something like that. So even if it is the plant, you're helping me see it from a different angle. It's not just a task. It's not just a chore. Because through my eyes, you just handed me another to-do list item to water this plant. But it doesn't have to be a plant. It could be something like a plant.
I mean, even I love that, right? It can be something like a plant. What about a silly, goofy stuffed animal of like a Bigfoot? You know,
Does that exist?
absolutely. We are official fan club members of the Bigfoot fan club. We have several Bigfoot stuffies at my house.
Of course you are.
Big surprise. My mom's 60th birthday party that my sister and I planned was Bigfoot themed.
Oh my goodness. Well, now I just have a million questions about that, which
I'll send you some pictures, Kate. Okay.
yeah,
It's not for the
we
viewing
can't
pleasure.
we can't get into this right now, but I want to. We cannot get into this. I love it. I love it about you. Thank you for doing this. It's been lovely as always. I really hope that anyone listening who runs a business considers that their employees might appreciate a little workshop on environmental wellness. I'm highly recommending Marie for that. I know that this is something you're offering to groups, which I just think is a totally priceless experience. So thank you so much.
It is literally my life's dream to figure out how I can integrate nature into my work. And so, yes, I love it. I'm available. Please reach out.
You know, I edit these. I'm going to edit that to say it's literally my life's dream to be on your podcast, Kate.
Yes, do it.